Laken Riley herself has given you all the evidence you need alone to find this man guilty of every single count in this indictment.
Venezuelan immigrant Jose Ibarra will spend the rest of his life in prison after a judge found him guilty of murdering nursing student Laken Riley. Her death near the University of Georgia campus shocked the community and the nation. We're going to be taking a look at what the attorneys and judge had to say about the defendant and what Laken's family had to say about her life and her legacy. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. In February of this year, 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley was out for a run. This was around 9 a.m. near the intramural fields at the University of Georgia. And that is when she was brutally attacked. She had tried to call 911, but when the dispatcher picked up, there was just silence. According to data from her smartwatch, Laken put up a fight for nearly 20 minutes before the watch stopped registering a heartbeat. A medical examiner testified that Laken's skull was fractured and that she was asphyxiated. So a combination of blunt force trauma and asphyxiation. Increasingly frantic calls and text messages from Laken's mom and roommates, they went unanswered. Her roommates searched the area near where her phone last pinged, but they couldn't find her. And around 1 p.m., hours after her death, Laken's body was spotted more than 60 feet off the trail in a wooded area. Her top had been pushed up to expose her breasts. Her pants were partially pulled down. Police believe that Laken's attacker intended to rape her, but when she fiercely and bravely fought back, he killed her instead. As multiple agencies launched an investigation, it was an Athens Clark County police officer who found a jacket in a dumpster that may have changed everything, because that jacket was stained with blood and had hair tangled up in the buttons. Officers pulled surveillance footage to see who might have dropped this jacket out. And what do they find? They find Jose Antonio Ibarra, a 26-year-old Venezuelan immigrant who had entered the United States illegally. And when police tracked him down, he had scratches on his arms, his wrists, his neck. He was eventually arrested and faced multiple charges, including felony murder, malice murder, kidnapping with bodily injury, aggravated assault with intent to rape, aggravated battery, hindering a 911 phone call, and also tampering with evidence. He also faced a peeping Tom charge that was connected to him looking into windows of a campus apartment on the same day Laken was killed. Now, Ibarra went to trial, but he opted to have a bench trial where it's up to the judge to decide whether he's guilty or not guilty, rather than a jury. Defense counsel's probably sometimes concerned that a jury will decide a case based on emotion or politics or pressure rather than the facts and the law. But to go to a judge, the idea would be a judge would provide a more sober analysis. Hey, by the way, thank you for coming to us for our coverage of the Laken Riley case. Really wanted to break this down for you about what was happening in that courtroom. And look, the reason we can produce shows like this is because we have amazing support that we get from our sponsors, and that includes Upside. So Upside is a free app, and what it does is it helps you get cash back when you buy gas and groceries and food. This is real cash back. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you transfer right into your bank account. And if you can see here, I used it to find a gas station. I claimed an offer. I pay with my credit card at the pump. I followed the steps on the app, and I got cash back. It is so simple to use, and you can use Upside at all different kinds of places like restaurants and convenience stores. So to find out how much you can earn, you can click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen. But make sure to use our promo code SIDEBAR because you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Hope you can check it out. Now, the state presented days of evidence and testimony, calling dozens of witnesses, entering hundreds of items into evidence. The defense just called 2 witnesses as they tried to raise reasonable doubt about who might have actually been the culprit. You see, Ibarra lived with several people in an apartment, and one of those people was his brother, Diego Ibarra. Looks kind of similar to him. And that's who the defense seemed to point to as the actual killer. Would make sense, maybe similar appearance, similar DNA. You get the idea. We'll get to the DNA in a second. But one of the 2 witnesses the defense called was a man who saw another man in black along the running trail that day. He believed that that person was taller than Jose Ibarra. Could it be Diego? Also, his description of events seemed to be a way to throw off the prosecution's timeline of the killing. The other witness was a neighbor who said that Diego had threatened to kill her. There was even plans by the defense for Diego himself to testify, but at the last minute, decided not to because of his own legal troubles. You see, he pleaded guilty over the summer to having a fake green card, which he showed police when they questioned him about Laken's murder. And by the way, they ruled him out as a suspect. Now on Wednesday, the special prosecutor assigned to the state, Sheila Ross, and one of Ibarra's defense attorneys, Caitlin Beck, summed up their cases for Judge H. Patrick Haggard.
Your Honor, Laken Riley herself has given you all the evidence you need alone to find this man guilty of every single count in this indictment. And as I said in my opening, and what the evidence has shown in this case, is that she did fight.
And it is a direct result of that fight that gives you all the physical evidence you need to convict him. And if you only had that physical evidence, you would have enough to convict him. But what you have heard in the last few days in this trial is video evidence laid on top of the physical evidence that corroborates it. Digital evidence laid on top of the physical evidence and the video evidence that all corroborate one another. And the three forms of that evidence in this case, the physical evidence, the video evidence, and the digital evidence, combined twist this very powerful knot that this defendant cannot get out of. There is no way out for him. The evidence in this case has been overwhelming. And the evidence in this case has spoken loud and clear that he is Laken Riley's killer, and that he killed her because she would not let him rape her. So in order to find this defendant not guilty of killing Laken Riley, you would have to disbelieve DNA. You would have to disbelieve fingerprint evidence. And even if you did that, you would still have this. Quite frankly, she got him. She scratched him. And you heard the testimony from Sergeant Epps and from Corporal Sayan. The left wrist was still oozing. Both of them saw that. And when asked, what's with these injuries, by Corporal Sayan, and we played that part of the body cam video for the court to see, Corporal Sayan wasn't coming at him hot. It was super calm and casual. They're out there laughing. They're laughing in those videos. Smoking, talking on their phones, talking to one another, all four of those people inside that residence, chillaxing. And Sayan's like, my friend, do me a favor, show me your hands. My friend, how did you get those injuries? And his first response is that of a monstrously guilty individual. What scratches? Y'all don't see these scratches. We don't see these scratches. So in order to find him not guilty, you would have to disbelieve your own eyes.
Evidence that is subject to more than one interpretation is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. As Mr. Kirby said in his opening, the evidence in this case is graphic and disturbing, and it is deeply sad. And I don't envy your position, Your Honor. The rest of the people in this courtroom get to be human. We can feel shock and outrage. But Your Honor is the court. You are the embodiment of law. And as the court and the fact finder, the law requires that you not allow your verdict to be swayed by sympathy for anyone. It must be based on the evidence. There is an alternative theory in this case that makes sense of some of the discrepancies in the state's case. Jose was short. He was chubby. He was, according to the state, wearing slides the morning of February 22nd. I agree with the state that Laken Riley was physically fit. She was fast. She could have outrun him. But there's another suspect in this case who was taller, who was more physically fit, who was wearing sneakers on the day of the murder, and that is Diego Ibarra. Evidence that is subject to more than one interpretation is not proof beyond reasonable doubt. I would remind Your Honor that even if you think the alternative theories of the evidence are less likely, but they present any reasonable doubt, you would still be required to find Mr. Ibarra not guilty. We ask that Your Honor apply the exacting standard of the law to these facts and find Jose Ibarra not guilty.
And it didn't take Judge Haggard long to come to a decision.
I'll tell you that You may have seen me, I make notes during the trial. I probably filled up 2 legal pads full of notes during the trial, but the closings, I want to just listen, and that's what I did. But I wrote down 2 things in the closing. One was a statement by Ms. Ross that the evidence was overwhelming and powerful. And then I also wrote down what Ms. Beck said, that I'm required to set aside my emotions. That's the same thing that we tell jurors in what and we're giving them their job. I would. That's the way I have to approach this, and I did. Both of those statements are correct. I'll now announce the verdict. In the state of Georgia versus Jose Antonio Ibarra, case SU 24 CR 0323, count 1, malice murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 2, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 3, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 4, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 5, kidnapping with bodily injury. I find the defendant guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault with intent to rape. I find the defendant guilty. Count 7, aggravated battery. I find the defendant guilty. Count 8, obstructing or hindering a 911 call. I find the defendant guilty. Count 9, tampering with evidence. I find the defendant guilty. Count 10, peeping Tom. I find the defendant guilty.
Yeah, I'm going to be straight up with you. Between the jacket he threw away that had Laken's blood on it and the surveillance footage showing him throwing it away, his selfies on the day of the murder where he's wearing the clothing in question, his DNA underneath her fingernails, his thumbprint on her phone, their cell phones being linked together at the time of the murder, this was, in my opinion, one of the strongest prosecution cases I have seen in quite some time. And I don't say that lightly. Now, Laken's family and friends, they could be heard crying in the gallery as the judge read the verdict. Ibarra, who had the aid of an interpreter for the whole trial, he didn't really show any emotion. The court immediately moved to sentencing. Multiple people were offered the opportunity to speak about the impact that Laken had on their lives and what this death means to them and how it's impacted them. It's victim impact statements. It's basically how her death destroyed them. And that includes Laken's mother, Alyssa, and stepfather, John.
Your Honor, on February 22nd of 2024, our family and friends were given a life sentence without a chance of parole. Jose Ibarra took no pity on my scared, panicked, and struggling child. There is no end to the pain, suffering, and loss that we have experienced or will continue to endure. On that horrific day, my precious daughter was attacked, beaten, and shown no mercy. She fought for her life and dignity and to save herself from being brutally raped. This sick, twisted, and evil coward showed no regard for Laken or human life. We are asking that same be done to him.
I heard in the opening statements from the defense that the loss of a life that was apparently full of promise is tragic. I'm here today to let Your Honor and the entire world know that Laken's life was not apparently full of promise, but instead was abundantly and exceptionally full of promise, and was a shining beacon in the life of everyone that knew her, that ever came in contact with her. I'm so proud of Laken and the beautiful person she was.
And Laken's only sister, Lauren Phillips, also spoke, as did several of her roommates and friends. By the way, Lauren graduated high school in May, apparently enrolled in the University of Georgia, where, as we know, her sister was killed. There was even this heartbreaking body cam footage from officers when Laken's family arrives on scene. They find out that she died. That was tough. Capturing a family's worst moments in life like that just kind of gives you an idea of the impact of a crime like this. Ibarra appeared to have no emotion, no reaction to any of this, to what Laken's heartbroken family and friends were saying. And in the end, the judge sentenced Jose Ibarra to life in prison without the possibility of parole. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.